This is what we're talking about. Obviously Nadia.
Yeah.
Not, yeah. Samina.
You want to?
Karen. Is Mohammed Sheikh
Yes,
here?
he's here.
Okay.
The young man with the gray sweater.
And Richard. Okay.
So we should get together.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everybody. We're here in front of San Francisco City Hall on the occasion of the vote for the local resolution against the indefinite detention provisions of the NDAA. I want to first read a statement from David Chu's office, and one minor technicality: the vote has not actually taken place yet, but we expect it to take place any time, and we have an indication that it will pass, so we'll keep our fingers crossed.
I'm actually from David's office.
Okay.
Oh, great. Oh,
Okay, so
Why don't you read
please,
that?
please.
Thank you.
when in a moment, yeah, you want to read the statement from David Chu? Okay.
great.
The first speaker will be Amy Chan, representing Board President David Chu, and then after that, Janet will take over MC.
Thank you. So thank you much. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for having us here. And I'm sorry, the supervisor is actually in the board meeting, so he couldn't be here himself. But he was very happy to work with this coalition of folks to make sure that we're calling on Congress to repeal indefinite detention. The supervisor feels very strongly and very definitively that indefinite detention not only violates our civil liberties, but it also repeats the injustices of our past history, and that it really fundamentally challenges the very foundation of democracy. So the supervisor was very happy to work with this coalition to introduce this resolution calling on Congress to repeal the indefinite detention provisions in the NDAA. And because we also have 5 other supervisors who are co-sponsors of this legislation, of this resolution, even though the board has not yet voted on it, we feel very confidently that the resolution will pass, and we hope that Congress will heed this call. So again, really just want to thank the community members and the coalition here for doing this really important work and for bringing this issue to our attention. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Amy Chan, and please give our best wishes and thanks to President of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, Mr. Chu. He read a very compelling and powerful statement 2 weeks ago when he presented this resolution then. This coalition calling for non-compliance with the indefinite detention provisions of the 2012 and 2013 National Defense Authorization Act. This magnificent resolution, which we expect to pass unanimously by the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, rests on a basis of American history, California history, and Japanese American history in particular. And it rests on the continued remembrance and resistance to indefinite detention, lack of due process, and other undemocratic proceedings that have happened in this very city, in this state, and in this nation. So I am very proud to introduce Karen Korematsu, the co-founder of the Fred Korematsu Institute for Civil Rights and Education at the Asian Law Caucus of San Francisco. She's the daughter of Fred Korematsu, who courageously resisted the internment of Japanese Americans in World War II. Karen has signed on to the amicus brief for Hedges versus Obama, the historic lawsuit that challenges the indefinite detention provisions of the NDAA. Please welcome Karen Korematsu.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for being here and in support of the resolution that hopefully will pass any minute now. But it is important to say that San Francisco is the voice for this country. And I hope that everyone hears us, because the rest of this country has the opportunity to carry on what we have started here and in the other communities that have also passed these types of resolutions. It may have to be at a grassroots level in order for Congress to realize that an action needs to be made, and it needs to be made soon. People don't realize that with the National Defense Authorization Act, our civil rights are really on the edge of being violated at any point in time by the military or the government as they see fit. So that's why it's important for all of us as American citizens to, as my father would say, stand up for what is right, because we need to work together in partnership with other communities to be sure that everyone's civil rights are protected. And we hope that this will launch a movement across this country that will definitely make a difference for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. And now I'm delighted to introduce Samina Sundas, the founder and executive director of the American Muslim Voice Foundation.
Thank you so very much. First, I would like to really thank all the supervisors who have been working with our coalition to just pass the resolution, which does not represent U.S. Constitution and it does not represent U.S. people. So we just really need to pay attention. As an American Muslim, I have been suffering since 9/11, because since 9/11 there were so many of these kind of acts which didn't make sense to human beings, but for our government, I don't know what. Patriot Act had nothing to do with being patriotism. Clear Act has nothing to do with clarity. Victory Act, nobody won in that Victory Act. And INS special registration did not make Muslims feel any special. So all it does is just divides us, separates us, and puts us, against each other. Last year, for the first time, I was able to go and visit Tule Lake at the invitation of my friends, Grace, and I have heard about the camp, but going there, being with people, just puts you in totally different place, because then you can see and experience what this community went through. And I just want to send a message to my fellow Americans that if you are not outraged what is happening in our community and in our country, you are not paying attention. So listen again, if you are not outraged what is happening in our country, you are not paying attention. NDAA will take us back during the World War II. What happened to them, it is happening now to minorities with different ethnicities and religious groups. So please, if you're listening to this, doesn't matter where you are in US, get organized, build a coalition, and just start taking this to the cities, the counties, the state, and to Congress and Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Samina. Next we have Mohammed Sheikh. He's a community advocate at the Asian Law Caucus, National Security and Civil Rights Program, and he's responsible for organizing around issues that affect the African, Arab, Middle Eastern, Muslim, and South Asian communities in the Bay Area. Please welcome Mohammed.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm a community advocate at the Asian Law Caucus, and I work very closely with the AMEMSA community, the African, Arab, Middle Eastern, Muslim, South Asian communities. And so we see the NDAA as simply the latest manifestation of a series of overbroad national security policies targeting Arab and Muslim communities. These types of policies have severe implications for these groups of people who have been subjected to indefinite detention, stripped of their right to due process, tortured and held on no charge without any contact with lawyers, friends, or family. When the NDAA was signed into law in December of 2011, it was the first time in United States history that indefinite military detention without charge or trial was codified. Yet we know that this is not the first time that the US government has acted in ways contrary to basic human rights. During World War II, 110,000 Japanese Americans were thrown into internment camps for no other reason than the fact that they were Japanese. This in itself is an unspeakable tragedy. Today we are witnessing nothing less than the repeat of history, but this time around the victims are Arab Muslims and South Asians. As a community advocate with the Asian Law Caucus, I see firsthand how policies like the NDAA affect these communities and leads to severe abuses of their civil rights. We must also be explicit about the social climate that is created and perpetuated by policies like the NDAA. When the government itself puts into law a policy which is clearly directed against the Arab and Muslim communities, it should come as no surprise when we see Pamela Geller's hateful advertisements that refer to Muslims as savages all over our public buses. It should also come as no surprise that in the same month that Pam Geller put those ads up, the media reported at least 10 hate crimes, including violent attacks against Muslims and people who were perceived to be Muslim. This is why we applaud the leaders of San Francisco for the anticipated passage of this important resolution, making clear that our city will staunchly oppose the NDAA and that every person in the U.S., regardless of race, gender, religion, national origin, disability, or sexual orientation, should have the right to a fair trial. San Francisco's resolution is a big step against an unjust, overbroad policy, but the defense of our civil rights is only truly successful with broad-based community solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm calling up Jeff Patterson, the project director at Courage to Resist. It's an Oakland-based organization, so thanks for crossing the bridge for us, that advocates for and assists U.S. military war resistors, including now the most famous in the world, Bradley Manning, who has been in detention for 1,000 days now, pre-trial. Jeff Patterson.
Jeff is a new daddy. That's true. I got an 8-week-old baby girl at home, so you guys may not have seen me so much. But
Congratulations.
So when folks ask me to speak today, I figure, well, what's this have to do with Courage to Resist or the Bradley Manning Support Network? Bradley Manning is being tried under military law, so it's a little bit different. But then I started thinking about Bradley Manning has been in prison for today 1,005 days without trial. Under rules for court-martial 707, Bradley Manning should have been brought to trial within 120 days. So we're talking 885 days have gone past Bradley Manning. His rights have been rejected. Today in the military court, Fort Meade, Maryland, our attorneys and Bradley Manning made this argument for justice, for the charges to be dismissed. And Colonel Denise Lind, the military judge, denied our motion for dismissal, saying that those 885 days were reasonable. Basically, the military was able to give itself a waiver for those 885 days. This is disappointing. It is not surprising. There's a lot of forces within the government that want to see Bradley Manning go to prison for the rest of his life. There's forces in our government that allowed him to be tortured for 9 months by Marines at the Quantico Marine Base in Virginia. And it wasn't until over 1 million people signed a petition, hundreds of us were arrested at Quantico in civil disobedience, and we harassed President Obama on the campaign trail, that Bradley Manning's torture finally ended. Bradley Manning was being tortured in part because the powers that be were upset at him for embarrassing them. Bradley Manning released not only logs of what happened with our tax dollars in Iraq and Afghanistan and embarrassing State Department cables, Bradley Manning also released the detainee assessments from the Guantanamo torture camp. And from those detainee assessments, we know what was happening with those prisoners under indefinite detention. Some of those prisoners, we were torturing them after we realized, we talk about we, the government realized that they were innocent, but they were simply trying to find out information about things like the Al Jazeera news network and how they operated. So Bradley Manning is facing life in prison for violating military regulations as a 22-year-old person doing his job as an intelligence analyst, coming across war crimes, coming across corruption, coming across wrongdoing. 22-year-old man, idealistically, thought he'd try to change the world, release this information, and he made the world a better place for it. Those of us who think that transparency and open government are worth fighting for, risking stuff for, we need to support him. Those of us that want to, those other folks that simply want to trust our government, hate Bradley Manning, and that's sort of the fork. You know, either we're going to fight for a government that represents us, is transparent, or a government that's closed to us and following the interests of God knows what. Help us free Bradley Manning. We're not gonna stop until he's free. His court-martial is beginning on June 3rd. We hope to have events around the world. This past weekend we had events in 70 cities around the world to protest, but it's just the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. Answer Coalition has been a part of the San Francisco 99% Coalition since it began in October of 2011, and a really solid member of our coalition is Richard Becker, who is the Western Regional Coordinator of Answer, and has done many things that I won't go into right now. Richard, thank you.
Thank you. I really want to make 3 points. One of them is that the Supreme Court, as probably everyone knows, has just passed, handed down by a 5-4 margin, ruling that really has to be called Catch-22. There was a challenge to a 2008 law passed by Congress that said the government can surveil anyone in the United States who's engaged in international communications. The people who brought suit against that were defeated by the Supreme Court on the grounds that while everyone can be surveilled according to the law, no one has standing to challenge the law. I mean, think about that. That's what their decision really says. Second point I want to make is that while the NDAA and the other repressive legislation, court decisions are a threat to all activists and to people in general, that the reality is that over the last 11.5 years, almost exclusively, with a few exceptions, one of whom was just talked about, Bradley Manning, and there are some others, but overwhelmingly, those who are being targeted are Muslim, Arab, and South Asian sisters and brothers. That's who's really bearing the brunt of this so far. And we need to stand in solidarity with those who have been targeted. And the third point I want to make is that it's great that the board is going to pass this. We hope it's being passed right now. I want to salute the people here and others who have worked so hard on this. It's going to take the movement of the people to turn this back. You know, there are, I believe, many illusions about U.S. history, which I think probably all of us agree with. But one of them has to do with the Constitution itself. The passage of the Constitution really deprived a vast majority of people in the United States of their rights. The Bill of Rights came in afterwards, but I believe in the first election in 1789, 6% of the adult population was allowed to vote, was able to vote under the circumstances that were created. And the only way that we have ever moved forward has been through struggle. We saw inside today the celebration of Black History Month, and that it's not very long ago that most African American people in the United States were deprived of all of their rights. And it was only through a tremendous and heroic struggle that was changed. It hasn't changed enough, but it would not have changed at all without that struggle. Thanks.
Thank you. San Francisco is now the 18th city in the country to pass a resolution opposing the indefinite detention provisions. So this is a growing national movement. For our last speaker, I will call up a representative of labor. The only union I was ever in was the Teamsters, so I'm very happy to introduce my fellow Teamster, Art Persico, who has been such a stalwart and such a backbone of this whole campaign, months long, to get the Board of Supervisors to pass a resolution. Art.
Thanks, Janet. I also am speaking for Tim Paulson, who could not be here tonight. Tim is the Executive Director of the San Francisco Labor Council, which represents 150 unions in San Francisco and over 100,000 men and women in the labor movement. I also want to give you a update, hot off the press on NDAA. There's a bill in Colorado that's passed one of their houses. It still has to go through their Senate, but it passed the House in Colorado. I understand Montana has done something.
Yes, Montana passed it today also.
Montana passed it today, so we're making progress. This movement that's been spoken about today is actually moving. It's happening. We're standing in front of a statue of Abraham Lincoln, and it's very appropriate. We recently celebrated his birthday. We know what he meant to this country in terms of freedom. I want to read one or two quotes from the president himself. He said, "America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. We, the people, are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution." He also said, "Don't interfere with anything in the Constitution. That must be maintained, for it's the only safeguard of our liberties." We also are missing a key organizer who's right now observing the Board of Supervisors. That's Nadia Kayali. She is the legal fellow from the Bill of Rights Defense Committee. She's been a key member of our coalition and an excellent legal mind and organizer, and we thank Nadia for the work she's done. Finally, I just want to say that, or echo some of the remarks that were made, that this is one step on the way, that we have a lot of work to do. We need a movement in this country. People everywhere need to really get involved if this is going to be a movement that will succeed in restoring American civil liberties, the bedrock of our country. So I want to thank you all for coming here today and speaking out and supporting this resolution, which we hope will indeed pass today.
Thank you, Art.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to say anything?
Shall we go back inside?
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Oh, Haiti. Yes,
Haiti wants to
please.
say something.
Yes.
This is Haiti Saraf, a member of the San Francisco 99% Coalition, so she'll keep it short because she's cold.
I'll keep it short because everyone's cold. I just want to say, not only because of my background of having escaped as a small child fascism, it is just, in my mind, essential that to be a citizen of a society is to be aware so that no one can ever say, why didn't you know? Why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you let people know what is going on? So I exhort everybody to speak up, to let everybody know, and to help us to organize as wide a movement as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.